Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, agents. I'm Atticon, and welcome to Gearset Talk, the episode currently in the works to try and redesign and readjust gearsets to work with the game in the current state. Now, Let's Redesign is going to take on a few assumptions and go off in many different directions. I'm going to try and not just talk about the gearsets in the sense they are now, but where I feel they should be in the coming future in 1.4 and even 1.5, which I assume will be what the Survival DLC is called. Now, we all know the current issues with the gear sets that are in the game, from the "these are too underpowered" from the Nomad set and Lone Star to the overpowered like Sentry and Reclaimer. Now, I consider there to be a few tiers for the current sets. The number one set consisting of gear people want the most. This is the stuff that has like Sentry, Reclaimer, and Deadeye. Now, those are the tier A stuff. That's the top of the tier. Next, you have the B tier of gear sets, which includes Striker, Tactician's Authority, Predator's Mark, and we'll go ahead and throw an Alpha Bridge to this as well. These are the middle class, which are things that people want, but they will upgrade to something else once they get them. And finally, we have the tier C, which consists of Path of the Nomad, Lone Star, Blind, and Firecrest sets. Now, you must be wondering what the other sets that I left out are, because these aren't actually belonging into any of the other sets, because the four sets really don't make much sense. They actually belong to the other sets because they're complementary or auxiliary to those other sets. These are sets that can be combined with other sets to make four pieces of other sets and just make it all around better. These are most likely, Final Measure, which is used to complement just about anything because the two piece is 50% to exotic damage resilience, and Hunter's Faith, which is mainly used in combination to Deadeye. These are the sets that really help and enhance the original gear set. Now, the problem that we face today is that there are tiers, and these tiers consist of tier A being used by everyone all the time, and the other tiers only being used out of necessity. Now, personally, I think that there should only be bonuses for wearing 3, 4, and 6 pieces of gear. What this does is force players to think about how they want to play the game and create less of a randomized gear set process, so that you're not using, 2 sets of this, 1 set of this, 3 sets of this, and so on and so forth, and getting huge bonuses for it, and being able to combine them to just kind of make up your own gear set and how you play. And I know it's not going to be a popular opinion with most people, because I know you guys like doing that, but this just means that there's less chance for exploits and being OP and stuff like that. And this means the days of mixing and matching gear sets would be more normalized and come to pretty much an end. So there would be less creating OP builds like what you see with a 3-piece Sentry and Striker combo was, and this idea, after all, was what caused Massive to go back and adjust the bonuses to those gear sets so you weren't using them as the meta and causing them to be a 5-piece gear set. Now, part of the problem I see with gear sets is the gear score. We all know that there's 191, 214, 240, and 268 gear pieces, and we're just talking about the gear sets, not the actual yellow high ends and stuff like that. The issue is that you don't actually need any of the gear prior to 268. Everybody wants 268 gear. You don't actually need anything lower than that. Once you find a way to get 268, you just do it. This takes a lot of the fun out of getting the gear. If you notice, Destiny changed the way they did progression on gear and made a system of infusion, making it so that you get a minimum gear score item and you are forced to infuse your way up to the top. In the Division, there's no need to get from tier to tier when you just have to go get the hardest items and have your friends kind of power you through or carry you in a game and get the gear score associated with it. This also removes the fun of the progression system and getting through the content, being excited for when you finally get that gear piece that you want and finally getting to the top. This really removes a lot of the work out of the game just by being able to go and get 268 pieces and not having to worry about anything else, because you know that there's no reason to craft anything in between because you're eventually going to get that top gear set. So why would you buy a 214, a 240, or anything else? And especially once you have one character all the way up there and you can run that stuff and just pass the gear back and forth, there's no reason to actually get anything in between. What I want to do now is go through in my next few videos and redesign each piece of gear from the ground up to be more useful and equal than what it was originally meant for. This video here, I want to start with some of the lower tiers and work our way up, because I feel that the gear sets that are completely underpowered are the ones that people want to, they're the ones that people want, and they're being used out of necessity because they don't have the top tier gear sets. The goal is to design sets that would be more geared to your playstyle and be on par with some of the higher tier sets and actually be super beneficial. Now, the first gear set I want to cover is the Firecrest, because this gear set is by far one of the worst in the game and has some of the worst bonus on it, which the first one being an additional 3 incendiary rounds for 2 pieces, 100% reload speed for 3 pieces, and incendiary bullet for 10 seconds when killing a burning target for 10 seconds. All 3 of these, while if you had been in 1.1, would be actually great. And I know a lot of people say the 100% reload speed is actually great, but these are some of the worst attributes on a gear set in this game. The first reason is that if you have, if you run 4 Reclaimer and 2 Firecrest, it would be a complete waste. Sets should complement each other and not cancel them out. The Firecrest starts off right, but takes a nosedive after that. The first attribute I would change would be the first gear perk. When wearing a 2-piece Firecrest, the user, or actually in this case we're going to be doing 3 and 4 and 6, the user would gain a 5% chance to shoot an incendiary round. So not just an increase to our incendiary bullet supply, but literally a 1 out of any 20 bullets fired would have a chance to be an incendiary, or well, 1 out of 20 bullets would be an incendiary round. This would be a huge buff to the gear set and enable it to not only be a good gear set that people would use, and it wouldn't be OP. The chance would be slim that you would get a gear that, or a bullet that would be an incendiary round, but in line with what some of the other gun perks already give. Now imagine being able to go ahead and get an incendiary round and not having to use it. Go into your stash and use your incendiary rounds or anything like that unless you had to. And this would actually be a good perk to actually get, because you would light people on fire occasionally, but you would only be using certain types of weapons. So this would be geared more towards your SMG, your assault rifle, or your LMG crowd. You wouldn't be using a sniper rifle with this. So your playstyle would kind of go and be geared toward those kind of those weapons. So while I like the second perk, the 100% reload speed, it doesn't exactly it doesn't scream Firecrest to me. There's no what does the fire have to do with it? Why is this set named Firecrest? So let's go ahead and scrap that all together. We can put it on another gear set or whatever it is, but let's scrap it all together and make a second perk called Refined by Fire. This is custom made just by me. It's not in the game right now. And this one states that if a user catches someone on fire, 20% of the damage with incendiary rounds heals the user. This would be an awesome healing perk added in with the incendiary rounds. Like, they would be very beneficial. So 1 out of any 20 bullets would actually heal you unless you were using your incendiary round, the actual thing that you would go into your wheel and select incendiary rounds and do that, because then it would go ahead and just heal you. So this would be an awesome healing perk added along with that damage perk, and it works 2 ways as well. With a 5% incendiary round, it procs, it heals the user, and when the user uses incendiary rounds, it heals the user. This encourages the use of the rounds as well as getting these gear pieces. Now, the final perk is the best, and it should be the best. If you are going to get 6 pieces of gear and wear 6 pieces of gear, your set should give you something awesome to go along with it. For the Firepiece 6-piece set, you should be given 100% immunity to being set on fire. Now, before you say, well, that's OP, that wouldn't work, this doesn't negate the damage by fire that fire does, but negates the effect of being set on fire. So no longer when you are shot with incendiary rounds would you actually have to put out the flames. You will still take damage from the flames. It just wouldn't be interrupted by the flames consuming you and having to put them out. So you wouldn't be staggered. You would be able to keep going. You'd still take damage, but in PvP settings, you wouldn't actually get caught on fire and you just take damage normally. But say like you're in Dragon's Nest and there's flames all around you, you would still take the tick damage and the DOT from that. So ideally, in my version of the Division, you would actually get a higher chance of getting these gear sets from activities involving cleaners, whether it's in the underground, Dragon's Nest, or even doing Napalm Production Facility on anything hard or above. Ideally, the progression system would work out great to be given a gear set at at 191 when you first originally start, and once you have a minimum gear score of 191, the next tier would open up, providing you with the ability to go to the next level. The problem is there isn't anything gating you from doing harder missions with people and farming gear at the higher level. There needs to be gates in front of each gear tier and slowly be given out to the gear in a timely fashion when you've earned it, but not removing the player's ability to feel powerful. So you want to still feel powerful, but even, at Destiny, if you're, level 230 and you're getting to 235, you still feel powerful, but you don't feel like you're, struggling to get to that next level. This progression system that I'm laying out for you right now would help to perfectly scale the game to a more appropriate level and allow for solo players to complete the content to get to the top level gear. Right now, certain gear is only accessible in Destiny through raids, but getting your gear maxed out isn't gated like it originally was early on. They fixed this through the infusion system. This should be a unique way to allow single player and co-op players get to the max gear score, but still not get the best gear in the game that you would have to get from like incursions and stuff. But they would still be, they would still get what they need easily without making it so the division is handing out 268 to everyone as they farm their gear. So that's my time, but I really want to reiterate what I mean. So I'm going to go over this really quickly. I'm just, I'm ending this video in just a second, but let me just go over this really quickly. So and give you an example. When you go into a mission, the average score is determined by the group's average. Now this is all hypothetical in my version of the Division redesign. So it's not the way it is now. This is the way I want it to see it go. So if your average gear score for your team is 235, enemies will be based on that level. So say it'll be level 32 based on the recommendations. And the highest gear score value that would drop is 240. Instead of recalibrating it, you could rebuild that gear that you get from there at the station for a price, picking the slots that you want, infuse and re-roll and readjust based on what both of the gear pieces are. So if you have a 10% exotic damage piece and you have fire resistance on the other one, you can choose which one of the two to integrate into the new gear, dropping out the other one and basically taking those two pieces of gear and infusing it into a better piece of gear. This would replace the ability to re-roll one item, and each item would cost 1 to 5 Phoenix credits, and based on the level of the gear and how much it is. It's a lot to take in, and over the course of the next 5 or 6 videos, we'll cover it as we go through all of the gear sets and how I would redesign them. I could probably do an entire video on just that whole concept myself, but so what would happen is you go in at 235 and you would go through killing all the 32 levels. The boss would be tougher, of course, and then at the end you would get this gear piece that drops. That would be 240, and if once your whole crew leveled up and the next gear score up would be 240, you get 245 gear, and then you get like 250 gear when the average is there. And if your average was 242, you would get 247 gear, and it's the whole infusion system that really Destiny has. So anyways, thank you again for watching. If you liked my ideas for Firecrest set and anything else in this video, drop a like, consider subscribing for all the best that the Division has to offer. If you have any ideas for gear sets that I'll be covering in my upcoming videos, leave them in the comments or just shoot me an email. Until next time, for everyone here at the Division Let's Talk, I'm Mountie Carl, and we'll see you at the recalibration station. Agent out.